Hello, my name is Kelly Bailey, and I'm a social emotional learning specialist, and I'm here to provide for you the final SEL and emotional intelligence webinar for the SEL series for educators, administrators, and really for our professional development. If you've been following this series, then you know you started with self-awareness and moving it directly into your own self-management, which are the two foundations for social management, which then allows us to build healthy relationships, beginning with ourselves and then moving outward to other people, including our students. And lastly, we're going to talk about responsible decision making. And really, this goes back to the brain, where we have to have our executive function brain hardwired for right connection, hardwired for receiving information, for really conceptualizing things and problem solving. And when we're in that protective brain place, right, the amygdala, we're not able to tap into that space for responsible decisions. And we know when our students are vacillating in their integrated space and their sense of groundedness, that they're really unable to really think before they speak or think before they act, and that happens to us too. So I'm going to, for the last time, share my screen and get this webinar up and going. Hope everybody is well. Thank you so much for taking the time to participate in this series for yourself. I truly believe with my whole heart that if we don't really spend the time and the energy in cultivating our own emotional intelligence, then we're just really checking a box with our kids. And when we invest in ourselves and invest in our emotional growth and development, then we become just more integrated humans. And I think now more than ever, it is our absolute obligation and responsibility for anyone who is in a role with working with children and for children to teach courageously and teach from the heart, and really step away from the old mentality of urgent teaching of a specific subject or a specific grade, and really see that we're teaching human beings, both small and big, and everywhere in between. These are other people's children, they're babies, and they're really counting on us. They're counting on us to do better. And humanity is counting on us to do better. So this means really exploring ourselves, exploring our beliefs, exploring our conditioning, exploring, you know, our implicit biases, and really going into a deep place of understanding. And this also begins with just having carved out time so that we can get right with ourselves and not be in that high pressured, high urgency, high stress place. You know, the last few months that we've been in COVID and been working remotely, we know that there's nothing normal about this. And we know when our students come back in the fall, they will have been without structure and without direct teaching for 6, 7, 8, 9 months. It's going to be a very long time, and they are going to need our patience and our understanding, and just our groundedness, so that we can help them get back into that routine of structure and predictability. And if we expect them to come in and just be able to jump into new learning, and we have this sense of we have to keep, we have to catch them up because of all of the things that they missed, there isn't anything that we could say or do that will be more meaningful to them than really seeing them and helping them feel safe and feel connected. We know that when we calm the central nervous system, that we're doing that for ourselves and for our students. So we're going to begin with this, our very last SEL 101, and that's cultivating ethical, responsible decisions for ourselves. So right and wrong, social norms and safety, this is where we'll begin. And really, responsible decision-making really is the final competency in the CASEL 5 framework. Remember, CASEL is a collaborative of academic, social, emotional learning, and this is both for children and adults of all ages, really leveraged through that lens of equity. We use the term ethical decision making and responsibility here in this webinar because it's necessary for us to really emphasize just how much stress and pressure educators are on and under, and to ensure our students' safety, to teach social norms, to help grow decent, good, caring human beings, and helping them to become good, conscious, just ethical, compassionate citizens of the world. From the small everyday choices to the big, large decisions that we make and we face as educators, there are multitudes of decisions that will come our way and tons of ethical implications that we'll be under. So it's really our responsibility and our obligation to make sure that we have developed this skill set for ourselves before we expect our students to be able to do that. And again, we have to be able to help them self-manage. We have to help them become self-aware. We have to help them develop right connections with other human beings. We have to help them develop the empathy and compassion for themselves and forgiveness, and to celebrate mistakes and not to feel conditioned or put upon by the mistakes they make, to not fester in that looping and perseverative mode when we feel like we've done something wrong and that we have to continue to sit in that. Remember that emotions will drive attention, and attention will drive our learning and our connections with people. And if we feel shame and blame and hopelessness, then that's where we'll sit. And although all emotions are okay, I say this all the time, it's really not okay to get stuck in any emotion that's not serving us in any good, well way for our own growth and development. So a good person can make another good person. And so, all of us went into our roles as educators, whether we went into special education like myself, or into mainstream teaching, or into specializations with speech, OT, PT, whether you're an ed tech, a bus driver, a person who prepares the meals for our students, our custodians, our administrators. We all play a big role in the development of our students in becoming just good people. And so that means we have to sit in that space of understanding that we're doing the best we can and that we're good too. A good person can make another person feel either good or not so good, right? So what is a good person? A good person is really a person that has a global understanding of what citizenship is. And, digital citizenship is something that we're really inside of right now, right? We're, when we're thinking about this from a conscious place, we're really conscientious and respectful and compassionate. And that's really in that social realm, our social awareness. This individual strives to establish a sense of global community in all their online and also offline relationships and duties. You can see that there are 5 different areas of global citizenship and digital citizenship. Personal responsibility. Again, this is about shifting the responsibility for learning to the student and developing a sense of accountability for lifelong learners. Leader of your own learning, really understanding how we govern ourselves and our moral boundaries and our personal fitness and health and our relationships. I'm not going to read all of these things through you. You can do that yourself. But, when we think about responsible decision-making and ethical decision-making, we certainly need to take in the global digital citizen, because so much of our interfacing, especially now, if we go into remote learning, for some of our schools across Maine will be remote part of the time, if not all of the time. And so these are really important things for us to help our students understand, but also for us to embody as well. Remember, in order to have your responsible decision executive function brain hardwired, we need to be able to tap into all of those areas that help us with attention and memory and judgment. These are the areas that help us reason and problem solve, high perceptual abstract thinking, formative knowledge, working memory. Those are, being able to take in information, think about it and manipulate it and spit it out a different way. I know all of us have sat in, or most of us have sat in our educational psychological evaluation reports with the ed psych evaluator saying, this child, this student has an executive function disorder, this child has a working memory disorder, this child has a visual, problem, visual perception, or visual processing or auditory processing. All of these things are because we don't have an integration in the brain, and that the executive function or the prefrontal cortex is not online for large amounts of time. So if our attention isn't there, if we have fleeting attention, and remember that amygdala will interfere if it is activated and hypervigilant and always looking for danger. Remember, it doesn't have to be real danger. It can be perceived danger, danger that we think about, memories that are triggered. If we come from a history of trauma, we have a high ACE score, we're hardwired differently. Cortisol, norepinephrine, adrenaline is running through our body at toxic levels. So be mindful of that with your students, especially those students who are coming back to school, who are already at risk. Trickier for our kindergarten educators, because we don't really know our students unless we've had the opportunity to, if they've already been identified through child development services and they're coming in with an IEP. But we often don't know, right? We don't know kids who are, what about our students whose families are migrant workers, and just students from other countries who are coming into our state. We just have to be super mindful that we can't assume that the executive function is on. So just like that, I can't assume that your executive function is on. I don't know what your day has been like. I do not know what you're thinking about. I do not know what you're contemplating. I have no idea what's in front of you in the days ahead. I can assume to know, but I don't. So before I jump into this, just wanting us to take a step back and to sit in that place of present moment awareness. This is also about cultivating a mindful, right, congruent heart, body, and mind. So just give yourself an opportunity before we go forward with the rest of the slides to feel your feet planting you on the floor firmly here. Just engaging in that purposeful breathing. You can close your eyes if that feels comfortable for you, or just soften the gaze. Some people like to put their hand over their heart and their belly and notice the rise and fall. Just breathing on purpose, slowing the system down just for a moment, making sure we're all on the same page of being available. Not trying to control the breathing, just in through the nose and out through the mouth. Just for a second or two, start to anchor. You may notice that your mind is wandering or racing, having a thought, a memory, or a plan. And so we use the mindful practice of anchoring. Well, hold on to the minute or so while you can practice just saying here or present. Breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. Slowly, mindfully, feeling your feet on the floor. Mind begins to wander, you say, thinking, okay, letting it go and bringing yourself back with an anchor word like here, calming. Notice with each in-breath, the body becomes a little heavier, a little more present. With each out breath, you start to become more grounded and centered in the now. Continue to anchor the breathing while we just do a quick body scan from the toes to the ankles. Just bring your awareness from your ankles to your knees, softening any space in between your knees to your hips, letting the whole leg become heavy on both sides, straightening the spine, resting on the belly, your core, feeling yourself rooted in your chair, moving from your belly to your heart center, and just noticing the rhythm of your heart, putting your hands over your heart. In breath, the heart still pumps. Out breath, the chest rises and falls. And just giving a nod of gratitude for the heart, a muscle working to keep us alive. We have purpose today because we are still breathing. Just saying thank you to your heart for working with all the other systems of the body. And then just noticing your heartfelt sense of who you are, your Sat Nam or your true self. Just giving just a place of loving kindness for the work you'll do today. May I be well. May I be safe. May I be healthy and happy in this still small moment. And right now, may I be free of all pain and suffering. May my heart and my mind be in congruent space, filled with empathy and compassion, understanding and forgiveness for myself. I am enough. I am doing my best. Just breathing that loving kindness in for ourselves. It's not selfish to do this work. It is selfless. Remember our stress management, our second competency of self-management. Noticing when we're stressed, self-awareness, and then doing something on purpose about it. Stopping, breathing, acknowledging. Breathing that awareness of I am enough in through our nose and out through our mouth. And letting the arms just relax by your side. Palms can be up or down. Letting your shoulders drop. Notice your neck. Soften the space between your top teeth and bottom teeth, letting the jaw relax. Notice your cheeks and the areas around your eyes. Soften your forehead and your eyebrows, and just hover gently your awareness above your head, gently sweeping from the head all the way to the toes and back again for just 30 more seconds of mindful breathing. Allow yourself any thoughts, memories, or plans to surface. Notice them. We can practice rain. Recognize, I'm thinking, I'm having a memory, I'm making a plan. Acknowledge that. Sit in investigation for a moment. And then just letting it go with non-attachment or non-judgment. True attunement to the self. And just getting ready to come back to this physical space of learning together. Wiggle your toes, roll your wrists, blink your eyes, maybe give a yawn, a stretch. And here we go. So responsibility and executive function requires that cognitive regulation. So this is where we just talked about the PFC. Remember that. This is the part of the brain that's the thinking brain. It's responsible for the executive function planning. When we are overwhelmed, when we're in protection, the thinking brain goes offline. The protecting brain takes over, starts to say, okay, what's going on? With kids, we call it flipping our lid. Adults do it too. Just recognizing. Often I will say to myself, what's going on with me? Why am I feeling agitated? Why am I feeling that low hum behind my head of nervousness? What's going on? And then when I take the minute or the second to just acknowledge it, investigate it for what it is, and say to myself, okay, Kelly, you're being anxious. And it really doesn't matter why I'm being anxious. My body is responding or reacting, really. It's reacting to some type of energy, signal, something that has come my way, a sense of urgency about myself, and I'm not able to think clearly. This is why we lose our keys, because we can't remember where we put them. But when we're in a rush to try to get out the door, or if our physical space is in chaos, a lot of mind science and brain science will say that people who get up in the morning and make their bed and pack their lunch before they go to sleep at night and put all of their things out so that they know and kind of know what they're going to wear the next day, and you have those things pre-planned, that we're able to stay in the place of calm, and we're able to stay in a place of centeredness. We're able to keep the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system in a place of congruence, so that the whole central nervous system is just humming along in a state of hormones and neurochemistry that will support us in optimal living. And so we must stay integrated. We must give ourselves time to breathe on purpose, to listen on purpose, to take a walk. I think that I said in the last series that my daughter is a middle school art teacher, and she just found a watch. It's called an Apple Watch, and Apple they've got this, right? They know what kind of humans that we are out there. We're urgent, we're working hard, we go from one thing to the next, and this Apple Watch actually it hums after you've been sitting for too long, because they know that staticness is not good for our health. So it will hum, and it gives you a little reminder, it's time to stand, it's time to stretch. Boy, I could have used that during all of this COVID Zooming. I have been rooted in this space, and sometimes I don't realize how long I've been sitting until my back starts to kick up and say, hey, are you gonna stand up? Until my tongue gets thick because I haven't had a drink of water, or, we just override systems. And when we do that, we cannot make responsible decisions. We cannot trust that our executive function brain is going to be there. Our thinking brain is going to take a break, and our protecting brain is going to keep us safe. So the first thing that we need to know about social cognition is the criticalness of understanding ourselves. And it means accurately perceiving what's going on with me and how I see that, or how I see the world. It's not a really pretty picture. I just love this picture so much. I mean, the art is just crazy out there. That's out there now. But understanding ourselves requires that we have an accurate self-perception. So again, going way back to the first competency of self-awareness. And then how does that impact how I see the world? So my social awareness is going to be impacted by my self-awareness. And if I don't unpack or find out what my implicit biases are, I'm never going to know. I'm always going to have my perception of things clouded by the things I thought might be right. So it's doing that investigation is so critical. So what is perception anyway? We don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. I'm going to say that again. We don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. So have you developed an accurate self-perception which allows you to honor the perception of other people? Or is your perception clouded by judgment? And is that possibly because we have inaccurate self-perceptions? So that's why it's so important to have a healthy relationship with yourself. This skill really requires cognitive flexibility. So some people, when they look at this, they see a rabbit, and some people look at it and see a duck. And whether you see a rabbit or a duck, or whether you can go back and forth, means that you have accurate visual perceptual skills. For one thing, you have some cognitive flexibility, but the fact socially and the perception piece for humanity is that I can respect those that see a duck as well equally as I can respect those who see a rabbit. and that I don't have to argue with them and get caught up in semantics about it, and I don't have to be right, because my responsible decision making doesn't lie in my perception that I always have to be right. It's, can I take the perception of another person? So to be cognitively flexible, we must focus on being aware of our own cognitive regulation and the competencies that are within that. So back again to self-awareness, we've talked about this and I keep circling back. What am I feeling? Where does that feeling live in my body? What am I thinking? What am I seeing? What am I wondering? What am I noticing? And this is why the power of mindfulness and mind sciences and brain science is so relevant today, because when we stop in inquiry and check in with ourselves and notice whether I am in that just right place or whether I am stuck, if I'm in a survival, fight, flight, freeze, submit zone, then I'm better able to take care of my immediate need so that I can make the responsible decisions that I need to later on. And sometimes this is life or death. So this requires our attention. So not much attention has been paid to helping children or adults pay attention. This is really not about having a long attention span at all. Long-term memory is very different than short-term attention. This is about our ability to see on purpose and hear on purpose and move on purpose, to react and respond on purpose. And if the mind is constantly wandering, then we need to notice that it's wandering so that we can bring ourselves back to attention. And that's why I teach the anchoring, the brain, the mindful practice of anchoring. I had a wonderful opportunity to join a beautiful group of human beings who are at Mecca, the school, the art school in Portland. And some of the students that go through Mecca also partner with the University of Southern Maine so that they can go on to be art educators. And so they were super interested in social emotional learning and mindfulness. And they, so we actually did, we did some work around this. And one of the students actually said, I've never had anybody describe anchoring in that way. And that this was also true for folks. There were some students who were, well, actually they're teachers actually, who are teaching in the Blueberry Harvest School for children of migrant workers. And one of the teachers said, we did a mindful practice of just attending to our breath and anchoring, and I taught them about anchoring. And one of the teachers said, I have been sitting with mindful practices for years, and I've always gone to a place of frustration because I was never able to fully engage in the mindful practice because my mind would wander so much, and that's all I would pay attention to. And she said, I've never heard of the practice of anchoring, so thank you so much. So teach your children about anchoring. Give the metaphor of it's just like an anchor of a ship. So important. Sit in a mindful place and practice paying attention to what you hear. That's why grounding, the mindful practice of grounding, is so important. It helps us retrain our brain to be purposeful in our attention, which allows our thinking brain to activate, which allows our prefrontal cortex to engage fully. And then we can make reasonable, responsible decisions because we're able to take in all of the information. So anchor. Goal setting. With each and every step you must take, you must move towards your goal. Otherwise, you just stay static. And this is why it's really important to get up and move. This skill requires our ability to commit to a desired learning outcome and monitor our own individual progress along the journey. Allow for setbacks, allow for mistakes, celebrate the growth, feel curious about the bends in the road and the twists and the turns that you take. You know, the road is long from the time we're born until the time we exit, and none of us know truly when that will be. So why not see it as self-discovery? And what I mean, we talk about all the time monitoring learning outcomes for our kids and monitoring the progress and taking data. But what if we're so caught up in the data that we miss the walk? And we don't see the bends in the road as opportunities to go this way or that way or experience something new. So goals are great, and every step is important. And when we mindfully pay attention to it and we're in awe of the steps we take, then we are present in our life, We are responsive in our life. And again, we're able to make those responsible decisions. So problem recognition and resolution, right? So the ability to identify a problem has popped up, and the capacity to dig deep and find ways to muster through is part of responsible decision making. And so this also is when we dig deep and we talk about grit and resilience. And that's not something that we're born with. It's something that we must cultivate and pay attention to and honor it, seeking and not being afraid to seek guidance from other people, to get other people's perspective, and not noticing that we're stuck, but not staying stuck, and not seeing the stuck as a problem, but seeing it as a project. I get to be here so I can experience this and figure something out. That's what grit is. That's what resilience is. Figuring it out and not getting stuck, and leaning on people is not, how do I say this? It's not a shortcoming. It's an actual strength. Being able to go, that's where your relationships, when you have right relationship with yourself, you can establish right relationships with other people. When you trust yourself, this is beyond what I can do, and I'm going to reach out to that person I love and trust. When you are kind to yourself, when you use the practice of loving kindness, then you know that it's not because you're failed or flawed or not smart enough to do this. It's outside of what we know, and we're still learning. And so problem recognition and resolution is part of that responsible decision making, and we need to grow it so that we can help our students know how to do this. So seek help. Helping ourselves by asking for help is courageous. It is not a sign of failure in life. This is our work. We're here on this earth, I believe, to be moving out, stepping out, not taking foolish risks, but knowing when we're beyond what we can do in this moment, and having that person that we trust to help us. Don't wait too long to be brave. Just get on with it. Someone at the lodges, I don't know what that is. Anyway, decision making. Think about different roads, possibilities, or paths, and then be brave and bold enough to take the leap. Whenever we make decisions, even ultimately if it turns out to be the wrong decision, everything's always no unless we try it. Right? So we can't become unstuck if we don't take a step out of the mud. And so many of us get stuck in the weeds. I know you've heard that, and we don't make a decision. All of us know friends and family who are so indecisive. And so think about what that does for you. How does that make you feel when you're around people who don't have the skill yet to be responsive decision makers? What does it kick up in you? Does it kick up anger? Does it kick up frustration? Does it make you feel annoyed? What does it feel? And know that those things were not developed and fostered in that child and that human that you're annoyed with, that maybe even your peer. Know that as a young one, that these things were not cultivated, because this is not something we're born with, especially if we're hardwired for fear, and especially if we've been not in the right relationship with ourselves. So our relationship has always been in strife and not loving kindness. When we do this, we perpetuate suffering, and then we also place judgment on other people. And when we're working on establishing our emotional connection with ourselves, we step away from judgment. We step away from that. We don't look at people and ourselves through a lens of judgment, because that just is not a congruent heart and mind and body, and it perpetuates human suffering. So in responsible decision making, we are also looking at our organizational skills. This is our time management, adopting new work habits to be successful in anything that we do. It requires a real commitment to the self and prioritization of the things that are important, and ultimately requires our on-purpose attention to those things. So think about yourself and ask yourself, how am I in my organizational skills and time management? Are there gaps there? Are there some things that I can pay attention to on purpose? And can I give myself some time to cultivate those skills? Because we don't have to be a disorganized human. We don't have to say, yeah, that's just how I am. I'm a train wreck. Because there we are. We're judging ourselves and we're putting ourselves down for things that we can develop. So again, brain science and mind science says organization is the person who, when you become an organized person, what you do is you set a goal for organization. And remember, the more organized you are, the more in control of how you're thinking and feeling, and you can handle situations that come about that maybe are things that you don't even know are coming your way. And so disorganization causes stress in human beings. And when we're in stress mode, remember the neurochemistry of our body and our brain kicks into survival mode. So taking small moments just to organize your workspace, taking small moments to organize the bathrooms, taking small moments to organize the refrigerator, to have your keys where you can find them in the morning, just having those steps in place so that you can feel just connected. This is all the way back to mindfulness. Mindfulness helps with cognitive and ethical responsible decision-making, because it helps us to be present in our life, to be self-reflective, to be aware when we're in that mode of high urgency. And when we sit in mindful practices or quiet moments of reflection and quiet moments of calming the mind, the heart, and the body, then we're able to hardwire our brain and our body for other things, other outside of urgency, which disrupts the responsible decision making and the rational mind. So there are 7 attitudes for foundations of mindfulness. These are according to Jon Kabat-Zinn. Remember, Jon Kabat-Zinn is a master of mindfulness-based stress reduction. And he says that attitudes are foundational practices and the pillars of mindfulness. And when we apply to our lives these attitudes, we can shift our mindset to within and connect with the love of who we are for all of humanity. Sounds a little bit contemplative, but I'll tell you what, when I first started studying mindfulness several years ago, I really didn't understand the difference between a rational mind and an emotional mind, and how when I'm either rational or emotional, then I'm not able to tap into my intuition and my wise mind. And so when the rational mind and the emotional mind kind of merge together, then I can tap into my wisdom and my intuition, and I can have balance, and I can live mindfully. You know, my rational mind helps me be focused and use facts and think logically and approach knowledge from an intellectual place, and my emotional mind, you know, helps me reason and logic with my thinking in a different way. But when we only use our emotions for decision making, oftentimes the emotion that we're feeling in that moment may not be the best impetus for the outcome that we hope for. So it's about bringing, you know, an integrated place so that the wise mind can lead us. So what are these attitudes? The first one is non-judgment. And each one of us has an inner critic that lives rent-free up inside of our minds, and at times can become quite bothersome. You know this because these are the things, the thoughts that go over and over and over and over and over in your mind, and they judge, and I should have said this, or I wish I hadn't said this. I'm so stupid. Why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that? We don't judge people when we feel good about ourselves. And when we stay in a place of constant self-judgment, then we are always judging others. Notice what you're judging. Notice as judgment surfaces for you. This was a practice that I did a long time ago when I was learning about non-judgment, and when I was working, set a goal for myself to step away from non-judgment of self. So the way this practice works is you start really paying attention on purpose to how often you judge yourself or other people. So when you look in the mirror, do you say to yourself, "Good morning, self, I'm really glad to see you. I love you. Thanks for showing up today"? Or do you say, "Oh my God, look at this hair," or "Oh, look at, I have this, you know, blemish on my face," or "Oh, I've got, you know, this"? What kind of judgments come about? Set a time for yourself to say, "I'm going to pay attention to my judging for 30 minutes. Notice the judging that you do with TV commercials that come up, or things that you read. Notice the judging that you do of other people as they walk by. You know, lots of people talk about how they love to go to the mall and people watch, or they love to go to the beach and people watch, or they like to people watch. What is the people watching really? Is it about appreciating humanity and how diverse we all are? Or are we people watching because we like to see, you know, compare our bodies with somebody else's bodies, or our hair with somebody else, or our athletic prowess with other, you know, people, whatever, you know? Notice what the people watching and what you're caught up in. Notice the non-judgment. This is what I just talked about. I love this picture too. Mindful practices for non-judgment. Just notice when the judgment surfaces and then don't judge the judging, because that's really tricky, right? So 30 minutes each day, set an intention to notice as the mind begins to judge and bring awareness to the judging and say, oh, there I am judging again. Okay, but don't do it in such a way that you're putting yourself in this place where you're a bad person because you judge. It's just that, we can even judge the weather. It's too hot. Or we can just say it as a fact. It's really hot. It's hot. That doesn't mean that it's judging. Wow, it's hot. We can, oh, my hair looks terrible. Or, yeah, this is what my hair is doing today. When people walk by, that person shouldn't be wearing that. Or, I wonder why that, or think about how we judge kids coming in, if they don't have their homework or, whatever. Think about, the only way to stop judging is to have a right relationship with ourselves, to practice compassion and empathy, and to really sit in places of how often do I judge myself and other people. The second attitude that Jon Kabat-Zinn talks about is acceptance. And this is really allowing whatever is happening in the present moment to simply be without judgment and regardless of the circumstances. This is incredibly difficult, especially if it's something that's so profoundly sad that it upsets our entire, human. We don't have to like it. We don't have to love it, but we are asked to just not resist it. Because when we resist something, then we perpetuate the suffering. So this is about releasing suffering from the mind and the heart and the body. And we set a stage for acting appropriately in our life, regardless of what is happening. So this is about noticing, breathing, allowing, even those things that are so, so painful for us. Patience. When we have patience, all things are difficult before they become easy. It's really a form of maturity. And it's a form of wisdom. And it's when we take that rational mind and that emotional mind and we sit in that wisdom place, the wise mind, and we accept that sometimes things are going to happen outside of our control and they must just resolve on their own time. When we intentionally practice patience, we remind ourselves daily, and this is maybe one of the works for you. If this is an area where you see in your own emotional development that is lagging a tiny bit, that you get impatient with everything. It may be that there's an internal desire and need to control outcomes and to control everything, because if you don't, then it's too fearful to even consider what could happen, and we get caught up in that foreboding and that catastrophic thinking and that chaotic place. So just giving yourself a little bit of room on a daily basis or maybe a weekly basis to just say, I'm going to practice patience in this moment, or this day I'm going to remind myself, may I be patient, may I be patient, or I am patient. So one of the ways that you can do that is practicing being patient on purpose in situations that you most likely would become impatient. So for example, if you're watching Hulu and you have been used to watching Netflix and commercials come on, do you get impatient? And do you engage your phone? And, can you sit with the commercial and be patient and breathe? When you're in the grocery store, especially now when we have to stand on the X's and we have to be, so many feet apart, can we be patient? Notice what comes up for you, agitation, irritation, and tell yourself, big breath in through your nose and out through your mouth, I am practicing being patient. I am patient. When we say, I will be patient, then it opens up the possibility that we won't, and then it gives us an excuse. We can put all kinds of excuses in as to why it didn't happen. But when we say, I am patient, I am practicing patience, we're setting that growth mindset. We're setting it, we're putting that intentionality in. I am patient. Trust. You can see that these attitudes all go hand in hand with the SEL curriculum. And again, not curriculum, the SEL competencies. And again, trust is in our relationship building. That was one of the big factors that we talked about. It's really an integral part of mindfulness and self-awareness. it's really the basic development of trust, trusting in your inner self, in your intuition, in your feelings. When we trust first our own self and we can develop confidence around that and agency without seeking validation from the outside all the time, then we are growing in our self-maturation. And even if we make a mistake, and we will, just to celebrate and honor the mistakes and that it was mine to make, it was yours to make, and it's okay. And it doesn't mean that we're less than, it doesn't mean we're failures. Taking just still small moments to sit in the stillness of ourselves and trust that right this second, I am okay. So practicing trust. And this is tricky, especially for those of us who have suffered some trauma in our past, to trust. And so it's about becoming self-aware when you're in a situation where you're being called to trust and you feel yourself becoming distrustful. Know that when we unpack trust and we're feeling distrustful, really what lies beneath is fear. And if we know the neurology of fear, then we know that fear is driven by the amygdala trying to protect us. And so mindfully, remember, calming that amygdala down. Remember, this is not, mindfulness does not replace mental health. If you are in need and require mental health from a mental health specialist and medication, please, by all means, take those things. I'm not trying to say, what I'm doing is trying to give you another tool for, your human toolbox. That mindfulness. Jon Kabat-Zinn did a lot of work with post-traumatic stress patients, and some of those patients did cognitive behavioral therapy, some of those patients did cognitive behavioral therapy and yoga, some of those patients did cognitive behavioral therapy, yoga, and medication, some of those patients did just medication, and he had a control group that did mindfulness and medication, mindfulness and cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness, yoga, and medication. And he had a control group that just did mindfulness. Every single group that had mindfulness so mindful practices and focusing specifically on fine-tuning these attitudes, the attitudinals, the foundation, the pillar of mindfulness, made more progress than just those patients who only did cognitive behavioral therapy, or only did medication, or did those things both. Anytime we can do a somatic movement piece with the yoga and a mindful piece where you're calming the central nervous system, because again, what we're doing is backed by brain science. So we're changing the neurochemistry of the brain and connecting new neural pathways for different outcomes, and telling the body, the limbic system, that it is okay. So we have to practice these things on purpose. Non-striving is the fifth pillar of mindfulness, and this is a practice of being present on purpose in small moments, cultivating that present moment awareness of the self. And it is not in competition with the self or other people. So it's not, we're not competing with ourselves to be more mindful today than we were yesterday. It's just being present, and whatever comes up, practicing strategies like RAIN, recognize, allow, integrate, and non-judgment. Patience while we're in the grocery store line, or whenever we know that we're being impatient with something. And it's really about simply being and breathing on purpose, taking small moments to just be okay. And we're not supposed to just strive through our lives, always struggle. We're supposed to thrive too. And so thinking about how much striving do you do versus how much do you thrive in your home and in your work. And know that when we're always striving, then we are not in moments of calm. Letting go. This is a tough one for a lot of us, including myself. And often when we begin to pay attention to our inner self and our awareness, we notice that there are thoughts and feelings and memories that the body and the mind want to hold on to, and others that we strive to really forget because they're so painful. And letting go really simply isn't about just putting everything aside and not having it be, part of us. But it's really about the attachment piece. So how attached are you to the story of the pain? How attached are you to the story of the suffering? How attached is your attachment the thing that, validates you and gives you agency? So it's about letting go of the attachment to the suffering, not the suffering that is, not the episode that caused the suffering. When we teach children to let go of the attachment of the suffering and to honor the suffering instead, especially useful, terrible, hard thing for all children to lose a pet. For some kids, this is the very first loss that they suffer. Hopefully they haven't suffered horrible losses of humans that are important to them. But if we have lost those people, we know just the pain of thinking about the situation that caused the loss can just overtake us. And sometimes it's about that our body and our limbic system were hardwired for the attachment, and we don't feel right if we don't feel wrong. So letting go is especially important. And so practicing those things on purpose is tricky, but it certainly allows our brains to hardwire differently so that we can honor the situation, recognize the suffering that it has, feel the emotions, but not get tied down and be a slave. That's not a good word, to be a prisoner to the emotions that tie us to that situation. Compassion, again, this goes back to our social awareness, the practice of being compassionate with ourselves first, so that we can share the compassion freely with other beings. And it really begins with non-judgment. It goes all the way back to the very first attitude pillar of mindfulness, non-judgment. And it talks about forgiveness, again, with our relationship for ourselves. It's the antidote for self-criticism, and it's just that perseverative looping about the mistakes that we made. Be compassionate to yourself. Practice that on purpose. When you notice that you are in a judgment place of self, say, self, I'm going to practice a little empathy and compassion. And that loving kindness practice, may I be well, may I be safe, may I be healthy and happy, free of all pain and suffering, and just be filled with empathy and compassion and forgiveness and understanding in this moment. Those are the practices that help cultivate compassion. And so then bringing this full circle for educators and students, we can practice these mindful attitudes with our students by purposefully building these connections and right relationships with these kids. Intentionally see your students as they come through the door, see them as unique and beautiful human beings that they are. Take time to get to know them. Take time to notice the feelings that surface as you connect with them or disconnect with them. Notice how some students make you feel calm and other students dysregulate you, and be curious about why that comes up. And rather than dismissing it or allowing that to become a barrier between your relationship with the student, cultivate a measure of curiosity about it. Help to build mindful practices into your classroom. Remember, identify and think and practice these things on purpose. Get yourself a book. This is a wonderful, wonderful book. I don't think I put it in, but Practicing Mindfulness. There's our 75 Essential Mindful Practices. It was written by Matthew Sokolov, and it's a wonderful book, and has lots and lots of mindful practices. Daniel Goldman's book about the brain and about emotional intelligence is another one. Study, pay attention to it, notice. Make mindfulness or focused attention something that you cultivate within yourself. Here's some resources, some YouTube videos that you all can pay attention to. And I just want to thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking this journey, for being with me from the beginning until the end of this. I know that this 5-week series has been a lot, but it's an investment in yourself. It's an investment in your becoming a more attuned educator. It's an investment in humanity. So thank you so much. I hope you will all be well. Good luck as you continue to move forward with plans for a new school year. Your students are so blessed to have you be just present for them. And don't forget that that you can rewatch these anytime, and please email me with any questions or concerns about the content. Thank you very, very much. Be well, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.